Welcome to another episode of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and we are back once again talking college basketball. That's right, folks. We are starting to hit the month of February. Last week of January is upon us, and we had ourselves a terrific weekend of hoops to wrap up, I guess, the last weekend of the month. Man, just all around the sport on the hardwood was just a great watch, especially on Saturdays. Saturdays, of course, are the days where we get 100 plus games on the slate and we get to just go up and down. I mean, I was working the 4-game multi-view over 100 games on the slate. It's a little chaotic. I can't get my eyes on everything, but I'll tell you what we did get our eyes on. Just four terrific Mountain West hoops games. Or I should say, four. There were 5 games played. One of them was a blowout between Boise State and Air Force. The top 25 games were absolutely fantastic. I want to dive in a little deeper on just the overall freshman class on this episode, because I do think it has some correlations with the Mountain West and, just the whole freshman recruiting angle that I think is starting to get a little bit, brushed under the table and under the carpet a little bit because of the portal stuff. And I want to get some insights on it and just another perspective on it with our guest, Jonathan Canas from San Jose State, who's going to be joining us later on in the pod to talk Tuesday's Mountain West slate. But what we're going to do right now in the first half of the podcast, I would say, is just kind of recap everything from Saturday. A lot of stuff to get our hands on, some separation starting to be had right now in the Mountain West. And look, last podcast that we had was over a week ago. I will say it's very difficult on my end to kind of get 2 pods out on the same week. So if we could kind of if we do these early in the week and kind of just nosedive in from there, because a lot of times is when San Jose State's got 2 home games this week. So I'll be on the air tomorrow. We're recording it on Monday. I'll be on the air Tuesday night and then versus Boise State. I'll try to rewatch all the games on Wednesday. And, usually that takes some time, obviously, because I obviously want to give everybody on this platform a thorough breakdown and just my thoughts on what I saw from my naked eyes. And then, just there's only so many more hours in the day, right? Well, what we got in front of us right now is a very competitive Mountain West. And I have to say, the top is starting to really separate itself right now. And a few surprises along the way, I feel like. But overall, this is pretty much kind of where we're at right now. A few surprises in here. But San Diego State and Utah State, just kind of the separators. Utah State having not the greatest week after losses to UNLV at home and then going on the road at Grand Canyon in what I thought was going to be a very difficult game for them. Hasn't really played in too many difficult road environments. That was by far their toughest road test over a week ago at Grand Canyon. And of course, GCU stormed the court. But Utah State losing to UNLV, that just couldn't happen. I mean, UNLV had their first win in Logan in over 10 years 5 days ago now. And Utah State, I mean, they were a gigantic favorite in that game. I mean, they were up 9-0. They were up 9-0 early. They had a sizable halftime lead. They were up double digits with 10 minutes left. And UNLV found a way to win the game by double digits. So just not the greatest body of work there from Utah State. Granted, they set the bar extremely high in non-conference, and but a loss like that most certainly kind of damages the at-large, bid for them, or at least there's going to have to be some work for them, right? There's still plenty of opportunities. I think they still got San Diego State twice. They got New Mexico coming up here in the first week of February. That game will be at the Pit, and they want New Mexico to keep playing better and better right now, especially with that 12-0 home record for New Mexico. So Utah State, there's still some opportunities there. San Diego State, I mean, they had the one loss at Grand Canyon, and they probably should have won that. I was not the biggest fan of that call at the end of the game. I mean, most refs probably swallowed their whistle in that spot, but I don't know. We've seen way worse contact at some of the end of these games that don't get called to what Miles Bird got, ultimately whistled for at the end of that game versus GCU. But GCU had, it was a very tight game. It's very competitive between San Diego State and Grand Canyon and out there and down there in Phoenix. And look, Grand Canyon had control of the first half. I believe it was tied at halftime, and it was back and forth, and it just came down to one of those calls. There's no shame in that loss for San Diego State. I mean, they're 14-5 overall, and they should be 9-0. But San Diego State, I mean, it's pretty clear now. Everyone thought it was Utah State early on, but now that we're 9 games in here, San Diego State is by far the best team in this league now, and we'll see where we're at in 2 weeks, because things could change in 2 weeks here. But from what we've seen thus far, and it really never looks pretty with San Diego State, right? Never really has. But that's the team that you will always trust on the road. And we'll most certainly dive into their game at the Thomas and Mack Center, because I thought it was just the ultimate spot for them to kind of, get right. I maybe didn't expect them to, maybe win the game by double digits, but I would have been absolutely floored if they dropped that game after, the Grand Canyon loss, 3 days prior to that Saturday game. As far as some surprises in the league, look, Nevada, and, Nevada's done a really good job. They had the loss at the Pit on Saturday. Well, I'll dive into that game a little bit more after, but I thought not the worst loss in the world. And, they were very competitive at the Pit. 6-3, they've looked pretty sharp. Grand Canyon, I'm not surprised by their success, but when you have a 3-0 week on what was a pretty difficult stretch for you, playing San Diego State and Utah State at home and then winning at Fresno State, that's a really good week for the Lopes. Credit to Bryce Drew's bunch. And, I have to say, Colorado State being 3-6 is a little surprising for me. This team got off to that extremely hot start in league play, or in non-conference slate, and they looked really good. Like against Virginia Tech, it was like a 1-point loss to Virginia Tech. They had some really good performances in non-conference, and you're just starting to see that the Mountain West is a different beast. And Ali Farouk Manesh, I think, starting to feel what it's like in Mountain West play now that he's kind of responsible for everything now as a head coach. I mean, the game versus Utah State, it was on Friday night, a few days ago, 3 days ago now. That was a game they should have won. I mean, Kyle Jorgensen couldn't miss. He was 5 for 5 from 3. He was talking a whole lot of junk. And then, I thought they lost that game more than Utah State won it, because there was just too many live ball turnovers. And I think everyone's heard me say this enough, where if you turn the ball over on Utah State, they're going to make you pay. They're just one of those teams that are 100% going to kill you. And that's exactly what happened. I don't have the fast break numbers in front of me or the points off turnover numbers, but they were just absolutely dramatic if you go look at them. And when you have Mason Falslev or MJ Collins or Drake Allen running the break, they're just going to make the right play. I thought Carson Templin had some fantastic plays down the stretch, just some winning plays for them. And, overall, I mean, that's the beauty of Utah State, their depth, because they've been rolling out Adlin Elamine a ton in the starting lineup. And then they closed it with a completely different lineup that they normally, I guess, weren't dropping all too much, because Gary Clark, was a guy that I thought really sparked for them. And Elamine's been really good for them, the freshman. And the fact that they closed with Clark, gave him some big rebounds, some big stops. That's the beauty of having depth on your team. And, you see it, that with teams like that for Utah State, they're a completely unselfish bunch. All they want to do is win, and able to close out a game like that. For how bad the first half went for you in Fort Collins, the fact that you're able to win that game and, regain control of that one was big, because that was a spot for them that you couldn't lose 3 straight. Otherwise, it would have just completely derailed your resume. So good win there. I thought that was a big momentum swing in the standings for that one. Just because, wow, look at where Colorado State is now. I mean, I know it's very much jumbled up here in the middle, but that was a big swing game for both sides, especially because Utah State on paper shouldn't have lost that UNLV game, but UNLV, as we all know, pops up in spots like those when they get games that you would totally not expect them to get. But that's where we're at right now. Boise State 3-0 week, really solid. I'm not going to talk about their game versus Air Force because there's really not too much to talk about there. It was just a great game for a whole lot of people involved. But we're going to most certainly preview their game on Tuesday versus San Jose State as they come to San Jose for probably the last time, maybe forever, because I don't see them scheduling games in San Jose, given the conference realignment and just for, from a metric standpoint, it won't make too much sense for them with them going to the Pac-12 in a year from now. Speaking of San Jose State, let's talk about San Jose State's result on the road out there in Laradice, because this was a very tight game. 66-62. San Jose State loses. They drop to 1-8 in Mountain West play. Wyoming, I mean, they did not have themselves the greatest week prior. They've kind of been, I guess, if you want to call them the fake sharp team in the Mountain West, where you think they're at home and you think they'd be able to score an upset, and it just hasn't really panned out, where they just, I thought 2 games when they hosted San Diego State and Boise State in years past, they probably go 1-1 in that stretch. Those are games you got to get. And the fact that you go 0-2 and, San Diego State and Boise State both drill you in the second half, that was not good for Wyoming and for the Pokes. But hey, 66-62. I've talked about it, and I talked about it on Twitter. I talked about this with just a bunch of, folks around San Jose State. These games are always close in Wyoming. Always close, because last year, San Jose State won this game with 5 guards in the second half. It was one of the more obscure lineups that maybe I've ever seen. And they were just be able to kill them with their speed. And it was a pretty hilarious game when you looked at it. But SJSU, they had this, I mean, they were down 8 points at halftime in this game, and it wasn't, I guess, the most prettiest game. I mean, Gavin Gores for Wyoming was killing them down low. I mean, you see the numbers here on our screen here, youtube.com/@thesportscentiment. I mean, 15 points and 6 boards. And look, he went 7 for 8 from the free throw line. So, stuff like that just can't happen. I know Gores has been a really good player. He's been a solid contributor for them. But that can happen. And with the fact that you held Leland Walker to a ridiculously low percentage from the field as well, 3 for 14, 7 rebounds is a little too much for him. Probably not the greatest thing. And that's been the downside to SJSU this year with their defense and their rebounding, especially with all injuries. It hasn't been really too sharp. But the good news is for San Jose State, you get back Kobe Garland. He played 29 minutes, came off the bench, and, was not a great game from him shooting wise, probably his second worst game of the year, behind that UC Irvine loss at home early in the season and non-conference. But, 3 for 10. I mean, the offense just looked way more fluid with him out there, even with him only playing 29 minutes. So you got to give him credit. And, just this SJSU team, it's not looking pretty right now. For San Jose State. I think we all know that, but I mean, this team I feel like deserves somewhat of a pass, just given just the insane amount of injuries. And we all know this is probably like a middle of the pack team, at their ceiling in the Mountain West. The league is just that good this year, and the depth and the athleticism and the coaching all around is just pretty damn good. So, we'll see what this team can do. We'll certainly get into their game here versus Boise State in a few minutes, but, look, Garland's going to change a whole lot of things for this team. And I think Melvin Bell will go back to his 6-man role here on Tuesday night. Can you get back Yafet Mundi? Because even in this game, you certainly missed him. I mean, the points in the paint, 32 points in the paint for Wyoming. That's just silly work, right? So, I mean, what's Boise State going to do to you on Tuesday, right? with Drew Fielder and Javen Buchanan and dudes that got tons of size and athleticism. And again, we'll certainly bring back up that point here in a little bit, but just a closer game than I think a whole lot of people expected. And, for SJSU, you had a chance to play for the win here. I mean, Garland steps out of bounds there, loses his footing. Jermaine Washington hit a 3 to kind of cut it and give you in that spot to a 1-possession deficit. But if you look, Wyoming had the lead 73% of this game. So, they controlled it. They were playing from behind, but I thought very much a winnable game here for SJSU. If you could get some bodies back here, obviously, with Mundi coming back. I don't know what's going to happen with the Javon Hanna situation. My guess is at this point in the season, they're probably just going to medically redshirt him because he hasn't been warming up in any of these games. So something to keep an eye on. Maybe we'll follow up with Coach Miles on that in a week or two, or maybe this week now that when we flip the calendar month to February. But I don't know. It's been a weird situation, and he still has another year of eligibility as well. So we'll see how that works out there. Very quickly on some of our other games that we have on the table here. Let's quickly dive into our game in Las Vegas with San Diego State at UNLV. Like I said, just a get-right game here for San Diego State. When you lose the game versus Grand Canyon when you really shouldn't have lost it given the controversial foul call, shouldn't have called the foul in that spot. But UNLV was coming off just some ridiculously emotional games, right? I mean, they took care of business in San Jose over a week ago with the 7-point loss there, right? Or north of a 7, they had a double-digit point win there, an 11-point loss here versus San Diego State. But when you get a strong win like that on the road in a game that they would typically drop, and then the upset win versus Utah State, and you get the San Diego State team that's pissed off and angry and still on the road, coming off a loss themselves, this is just a typical Dutcher win. And I have to say, when Miles Byrd goes 5 for 5 from 3 and he's still impacting on the defensive end, you just kind of know that it's really not going to be your type of game, because Byrd, as we know, like the offense has kind of always been a struggle for him to put it together for like 3 straight games. So when he goes nuclear in a game like this and drops 23, you just kind of know it's over. And I have to say, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, I want to give this guy a whole lot of credit. He had a 33-point game versus Boise State. That was a career high. He had 27 in this game, and I know there was some empty calories there at the end where he was kind of, bolstering up the stats. But UNLV hasn't had Miles Che all year, and Gibbs-Lawhorn has really had to make an adjustment since the start of the season as this pretty much this point guard running the offense. Because that was Miles Che's job, and that's what he's done at Chattanooga and at UC Irvine, and he did a hell of a job with 2 different schools doing so. So Gibbs-Lawhorn, when I saw him in person over a week ago versus San Jose State in the Bay Area, he did a really good job of just not forcing his shots, making the right basketball plays, and he had tons of assists in that game. And then his game finally started to come along. And there's some games where he kind of has to be the all-out scorer, and especially in a game like this, where points are going to be hard to come by against the best defense in the league in San Diego State. But the fact that Gibbs-Lawhorn, I just wanted to give him credit for just that adjustment because it's been very sharp. He went 1 for 7 from 3 in this game, which is really not typical. So credit to the Aztecs defense there. And that first 3 came with like 1 minute and 40 seconds left, which was pretty nuts. But Miles Byrd, I mean, he had 4 steals in this game. When Miles Byrd has a steal, like when he steals the inbounds, they're just momentum swinging plays. Like you're literally stealing a possession and a layup the other way. Like those just flip momentums in these games. And, he always has like 1 or 2 of those a game. I mean, he almost gets like 3 steals, per game, and he only gets better as the season goes on as we get into Mountain West play. But, San Diego State had a 5-point halftime lead in this one. And then I would say really kind of gained separation in the final, 5 minutes or so here. But good win for SDSU, now 8-1 in Mountain West play. And Taj DeGorville, Las Vegas native, played really good off the bench in this one. What do you have? 13 points off the bench. That's a really good game there for a second unit guy. And Reese Waters now has 1,000 career points. So kudos to him. I know he's been around forever. Didn't have the greatest shooting game, and I know it's been a little inconsistent for him, but still impacting the game in other ways. 7 rebounds as well for him. So good win for SDSU. And I have to say, UNLV is 5-2, 5-3 in Mountain West play. They're most certainly, they're looking sharp. Maybe a lot better than what people are giving them credit for. Out there in Vegas. I think Josh Pastner, I know some people kind of gave some slack on the hire, but he's done a good job given the situation. Anytime you lose your point guard for the year and kind of having to adjust on the fly like that. And, they've scored some big wins, and I know they've had some very terrible losses in the process, but still a good win for SDSU, just a culture win for them. That's a game that they always get, right? Dutch are on the road. It's just always so reliable. Grand Canyon at Fresno State. GCU, massive week. They go 3-0, and now we're going to dive into their game tomorrow with Jonathan Canas here in a few minutes. But this is going to be their 4th game in 9 days at Reno. So the fact that you take care of Utah State and San Diego State, and then you survived the ultimate trap game special out here at the Save Mart Center, kudos to GCU, because we've seen Colorado State, we've seen Wyoming, and, we've seen some other teams as well in Mountain West play come out to the Central Valley and just, put up a goose egg and do absolutely nothing and spot Fresno 10 points in these games early on and never recover, right? But Grand Canyon gets it done by 11 here. And especially when Brian Moore Jr. gets ruled out like an hour before the game, down a starter, and Zayon Collins for Fresno gets ruled in, you kind of start to get a little antsy and worried a little bit for the GCU side. But Jaden Henley showed why, he's going to probably be in the running for a first team All Mountain West selection here. Maybe not, I don't know about first teamer, but this is the time of year. We saw it with him at UNLV where he kind of just turns it up a notch. And I know he kind of was the beneficiary last year at UNLV of the Deedon Thomas injury, and then he had to take over ball handling duties. But Jaden Henley, I think, is going to have a massive February and March here coming up here for GCU, because 23 points and 10 rebounds and going 9 for 11 from the free throw line is just nuts. He had the dunk of the year in the Mountain West that I've seen so far. He absolutely just posterized, I think it was Wilson Jack with 5 minutes to go in this game. But he just went into takeover mode late. And, when you have a team like Grand Canyon that's got all these moving parts and have figured it out here in the last 3 weeks now, and since we've kind of really moved on to league play, to have a guy like Henley to just kind of take over in this game, on the road too, when the game's just kind of hanging there, I thought was massive for this group. Makai Williams, he's 4 for 13, but that guy's just, he's going to chuck up a bunch of shots and he's going to make, a decent amount. And you're just going to live with it. Nanu Owusu-Anane, we talked to him in the preseason, but man, the fact that, his defense, I thought, has been really underrated this year, and a rebounding freak, 12 rebounds in this game. That's just nuts, but that's a guy that just impacts winning. I think a lot of people are starting to figure that out now, because with this GCU team, remember, they plucked a bunch of these guys from all over the place. Brian Moore from Norfolk, Owusu-Anane from Brown, right? The Gonzaga transfer in Stromer, who I know hasn't had maybe the greatest season and is now coming off the bench for this team. But they just have impact players all over the place. Something to monitor on the GCU side, Caleb Shaw ended up going out with an injury in the second half. So you never know. GCU could be down 2 starters at Nevada tomorrow night. So that's something to monitor. But for Fresno side, Deshaun Gorey, a guy that continues to impress. And I talked about his emergence maybe over a week on our last podcast over a week ago. But he had a career high at New Mexico, 31 points and 14 rebounds, career highs in both of those. This is now his 7th straight game in double figures. He's got 4 double-doubles in the last 6 games, or 5 double-doubles in the last 6 games. I mean, he's in running for freshman of the year, if you ask me. He's been that good for Fresno. And I know it's Fresno State and the record doesn't look good, but like I said earlier, and I said in another podcast, this is a guy that's improved drastically from the start of the season, from when we saw him when they were playing like USC Upstate and, the Division II crosstown team in Fresno Pacific. Like, there is just so much upside for this guy. And, I have to say, Fresno's done a really good job, finding these guys. They had Elijah Price last year, and they got another forward this year in Gorey. You just hope a guy like that doesn't hit the portal. And David Douglas coming off the injury, 15 points, 4 threes. I mean, he had some crazy threes in this game too, just deep threes. Just all over the place. He's definitely been an impact piece, but Hydebreeder. I know he's been awesome at the line this year, but the 3-point numbers just a little bit down. He only got 3 threes in this off, so you got to credit GCU there. And he played 38 minutes in this game, but just a little shocking. The fact that he's probably like right around 30% from 3, and usually you think, okay, 30% from 3, not terrible, but this is traditionally a 40% guy. So just something to keep an eye on. The shooting splits for Jake Hydebreeder, not what we've expected, but overall Fresno, 11-point loss. But I think it just more so shows about what Bryce Drew did on the road as a coach. Last game we want to talk about here before we dive into Tuesday slate here. New Mexico in the Steve Alford Bowl, if we want to call it that. I'm going to go ahead and call it that because Alford was there for such a long time. Ended up getting booed before the game, ironically enough. Which, Alford had himself a good tenure there. Don't get me wrong. But I get it. He's on the other side now. So New Mexico and Nevada. New Mexico still undefeated at the pit. What are they, 12-0 now at the pit? Just ridiculous. But I have to say, even though New Mexico won this game by 7, I thought a good showing from Nevada in this spot. Because no one's been able to win at the pit, and everyone's gotten blasted in this building, as I think everyone that follows the league knows, right? So the fact that Price, got you 16 points. Price has been in foul trouble a ton in these games, since Mountain West play has started. And, Von Weems, I think, is ultimately might be one of the big stories here. And Weems having is one of his better games of the year, 7 for 9, just efficiency. This is a guy that can score the hell out of the ball. He did so there at the junior college level. But look, Weems, I thought, had himself a good game. They did a really good job on Comer, and he ended up fouling out. They were playing the foul game late, and, he just ended up fouling out. But Camper's been good all year for them. They've been trying to, they've been mixing up these lineups here. And look, Rollison and Chuck Bailey, who were the guys, are like, this is amazing. Like how a game how the season just develops and turns, because I think everyone coming into the season thought, okay, it's going to be Rollison and Bailey that are going to take up all of these minutes. And we'll see what the roles look like, maybe for a guy like Comer and Weaves. And all of a sudden, Rollison gets 12 minutes and Bailey gets 5 minutes in this game. So Comer's been the guy all year for them, but I'm just going back from the preseason, what we all thought. But Comer didn't really have a good game in this one. Was just kind of trying to be a facilitator. And New Mexico did a hell of a job on him, but he's kind of been their all out, scorer per se. But Price, I thought, is really taking a notch up out here in Mountain West play, really showing his physicality down low, and Camper's done a really good job as well. And for New Mexico, you just see they spread it around everywhere. The fact that JT Rock, he's been a really good front court piece off the bench. 11 points in 9 minutes is just silly. So Albury really doesn't have to do too much scoring in an offense like this, where they have so many breakout freshmen. New Mexico does, right? And this team is really young, and the fact when you watch this team, they don't look like freshmen out there. This looks like an old team with Tannett and Bouillon and with JT Rock and Jake Hall. Jake Hall, I mean, that's probably your Mountain West freshman of the year now that we're kind of putting it all together. I mean, he had another 19 points in this one. I think he's got 8 20-point games now this year. Like, he's been incredible for them, and he does not look like a freshman at all. 5 for 9 from 3. I know they're coming to San Jose this on Saturday, so we'll get a good look at them in person. But man, that's been a really good team for New Mexico. Eric Olin, probably your coach of the year right now. If we're talking, if the season were to end today, obviously we still got a whole lot more ways to go here, February and into March. But man, New Mexico looks really good right now. And we had Rocco Miller on, our bracketologist that just knows the college hoops landscape very, very well. Great follow on Twitter if you don't follow him. But he kind of threw out New Mexico like, hey, keep an eye on them. And this was over a month ago about them as far as the at-large bid territory. And I don't know where they stand right now. I haven't checked the bubble or anything like that. But they're certainly making themselves a case. I know they have a loss at San Diego State, but they've taken care of the games that they need to take care of. And if they could go on the road at Utah State, or if they could go, take care of San Diego State at home, a game that they always traditionally do take care of. I mean, they're going to be in the running there. They're going to be in the bubble. I think it might just come down to their Mountain West tournament and with just the body of work that they ultimately do over there. So let's get into Tuesday's slate, and let's also bring on our guest right now because, look, he's going to be on the air with me tomorrow night for San Jose State and Boise State. Traditionally, always a very fun game. Even though you go look at the final scores and they might not necessarily dive into it. But this guy, Jonathan Canas, he's been on the podcast, no stranger to being on. He's called this game 3 straight years now with me out there in San Jose on the very airwaves. So he obviously knows the Boise State squad very well and what Leon Rice has up his sleeve. So let's bring him on in. Jonathan Canas. John, appreciate you for coming on the pod, man. Always good to be talking to you on a Monday. And I have to say, and again, the Mountain West certainly brew into a fun league as always at this time of year. But when we get SJSU and Boise State in San Jose in particular, I know in Boise it's a different story. The Spartans always get drilled over there. But when we have this game in the Bay Area, we're always just talking about that it's just always a sleepy game for Boise. I guess, what do you make of this one? San Jose State's got Kobe Garland back. The record doesn't look pretty, but I have to say, you kind of have to take this San Jose State team with a grain of salt, like you and I have talked about offline, because of the injuries. And I think we might have ourselves a pretty fun game tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's what I'm hoping for. As we all know, school's back in session. So hopefully expecting a little bit of a bigger crowd than usual than over the last couple of weeks. But, it all depends on who's out there for San Jose State. And I know Kobe Garland, came off the bench and basically got starter minutes off the bench at 29 minutes in the loss at Wyoming. But, I need to see everybody there 100%. If Mooney's there, that goes a long way. And I think then it'll be a game. But, this Boise team, I know they're winners of 3 in a row, but they're not the team that we saw the last 3 years in a row. And that kind of gives me hope. And just especially coming off the game last year when they're bringing in Cardenas back in town, and they only lost this game by 2 points. I mean, it was 73-71, and it came down to the last shots, and Adrian Hall grabbed the rebound, couldn't put it back. And there was 3 different lead changes the last 5 minutes. They were going back and forth. Looked like anybody's game, and ultimately SJSU came up short. But man, if history is any indication, I think we're in for another back and forth game again tomorrow night, Nick.
So I would say the past 4 years with this. Okay, so yeah, last year we had the Cardenas return game, and of course, if you're not aware, Alvaro Cardenas, 3-year San Jose State guard, was pretty much the heart and soul of a lot of those teams. Including the historic SJSU 2021 squad, the 2021 squad that ended up winning over 22 games and ended up winning their first Mountain West tournament game. He was kind of the leader of that team with Amari Moore, who won Player of the Year, and Coach Miles won Coach of the Year that season. And, he was here for 3 years. And I have to say, it was from watching that game and him in another uniform, I know he didn't have the greatest game. I know he had he kind of took over the game from a playmaking standpoint last year, but he had a big 3 late in that one. But you could tell the nerves for him are kind of there for sure. 3rd year in a row, we're getting Andrew Meadow here, right? He's it is in a year or in an era now where you don't really have the same 3 years in a row. You don't have the same guy on your spotting chart. You get Andrew Meadow now, who was maybe towards the bottom of your chart when he was a freshman, wearing those goggles and just a spot-up 3-point shooter.
Long hair.
Long hair and all. And now, he is top 2 scorer on this team, between him, Buchanan, and Fielder. It's interchangeable between those 3 every single night now. But just what have you seen here with the growth of Andrew Meadow? Because I have to say, I kind of thought he was going to really take the next step, and it was a little slow. I thought he should have been maybe forcing and calling for the ball a little bit more during the early portion of the season. But now I think Boise's starting to find their identity here, 3-0 in the last week. But just what have you seen here from Meadow? Because this guy is really starting to use his size and physicality now, just as a slashing forward.
Yeah, man, I really saw it at play when they were at Wyoming, and they kind of going back and forth for the first 10 minutes before it ended up becoming a blowout. But not just his rebounding that impresses me, but, man, this guy can really just go up and down the floor, just straight up. As a big man, I think that goes a long way, especially with the guards you have here. And when the season first started, I kind of thought this would be more of a Dylan Andrews and Fielder type of show just because they were the transfers who came in. But like you said, man, it's been Andrew Meadow, the guy who sat behind Tyson Degenhardt and eventually started alongside him, who's come a long way here for this team. And, man, just seeing the growth and, calling these games the last, 3 years in a row as he's came here as a freshman. He's come a long way, obviously exceeded my expectations. I thought he would just be a rotational player, not going to lie, throughout his NCAA career. But this guy has been a key part in why they're, 7th in the Mountain West on this 3-game winning streak. And, I think, whether or not Yafet Mundi's in that game tomorrow night, they're going to feel Andrew Meadow's presence alongside Fielder, one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the Mountain West. And, it starts with those 2 guys. But Andrew Meadow, he can hurt you in all ways. And, maybe they got themselves it's going a little too far, but they're like a mini Tyson Degenhardt over there in Andrew Meadow.
For sure. So going back to just how close the games have been, it was a 2-point game last year, like you mentioned. Then the game then in 2022, 2023, the game went to overtime. That was the year that SJSU pulled off the upset. Boise still made the NCAA tournament that year. But that was a game, if you recall, that SJSU had a tremendous rebounding team with Viola and Diallo, and they killed them on the boards. SJSU did by over 20, plus 20 rebound margin for the Spartans in that game. But with a 2-point loss there. Boise had a 9-point win, if you recall, 2 years ago. And that was a game where, it was tied at halftime, and Boise kind of cooked the books a little bit. And it was Degenhardt who really just took the game over late. And last year in particular, I remember Javian Buchanan was big for them. He had a big layup and a big stop, and then Cardenas kind of was dissecting SJSU's defense. But like we said, these games in the Bay Area are traditionally pretty close. I guess what do you want to see from SJSU's end? Because I imagine Garland will be back in the starting lineup. I imagine they'll kind of rack up his minutes a little bit more, try to crank him up. And, Melvin Bell will probably go back to a 6-man role, which I would probably say it's pretty good because then he could kind of come in and, just kind of have his second unit, leadership and really kind of take over the game that way. And if Garland does need an additional rest, because Probably not going to run him down to the ground here, right, with 40 minutes. But in the third, let's just say he played 29 minutes on Saturday. Let's just say he plays 34, 36 minutes in this one. Your second unit scoring here with Bell could kind of take a jolt to what we've seen here the last 2 weeks when SJSU was down 5 starters.
Yeah, and they can kind of rotate between Bell and Washington that way, hopefully to give Garland some rest. And I'm just a little shocked that Godarzi just the last couple of games has provided some quality minutes off the bench and just some spot up 3-point shooting opportunities. And obviously in the last game, kind of just needing him to get in the core just to give Garland some rest. But I'm just excited for what they've been able to provide. And for Bell, I mean, having this time in the starting lineup as a freshman coming over here, maybe not the best situation he wanted, but I believe the last game he finally ended up in single-digit points after having like 8 games in a row in double digits. So I think he's come a long way, and just having that small time period running like the offense or being at least the number one guy, even though maybe your coach and your team didn't want you to be, had no choice. But it goes a long way, man. And when all these guys start to come back, and even next year, I know that's looking too far ahead, but he'll be a quality piece, and hopefully he sticks around. But in this particular game, I love the fact that he's coming off the bench. He's coming off a game where he wasn't so good in. He can finally get back on that hot streak. And Garland's going to need that second score. I know Jermaine Washington had a great game with 14 points, and so did Sada. But if Melvin Bell can come in here and just get into form, he's so big for a number 2. He's 6'4". He's lengthy. He can really guard like 2 through 4. I'm very impressed with him so far, and we just got to see more offensive consistency from him. But he's earned his shot at being out there. Last year we kind of saw Jermaine Washington being that guy touching the floor, as a true freshman, and now it's kind of become Melvin Bell just impressing Tim Miles, and it's a lot more than having no choice. He has a lot of talent out there, and some teams now are obviously starting to game plan for him.
What do you make of I know this was kind of a spot last year for him because his second year with SJSU, but Sada Nganga, he had a good game last game versus Wyoming. Now he gets to go up against Boise State, and very similar to what was the situation last year. But obviously, there's going to be a little bit of a jolt there. For the team that recruited you and you didn't play against. I know it's been kind of a roller coaster ride of his career. Third school and kind of a senior campaign here now for Sada Nganga. But I mean, if you could kind of get the 3-point shooting, I mean, he could be an X factor in this game, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think him going up against his former team could certainly, provide a little mental spark, if you will.
I agree. I mean, he was the other guy to go alongside with Jermaine who had like that 14 or 15-point performance in the loss against Wyoming. I think that'll go a long way for him emotionally. I think we've heard Tim Miles just a couple of times in post-game press conferences speak on Sada and just say like he knows that there's more there, that he can offer. And I think there is too. We saw finally, I think that breakout game against Wyoming. He had a good matchup against Wyoming last year as well. I think that was just a good advantage for him. And maybe this particular crew with Boise, I like Fielder and Meadow, but he has the size advantage for once, especially in this game against Boise. Those guys are around 6'9", and if he can start knocking it down from 3 and get some rebounds, you're right, he can be an X factor in this game. And hopefully these other guards can actually make their shots, and they can start to leave Sada wide open in the corner, like a lot of teams have in the past. They tend to forget about him, especially when it's in the second half. Kind of forget that you have like a 7-foot freak who can just knock it down from beyond the arc. And he's that guy who can provide that spark. And the fact that this is, senior year, team who recruited you, Boise State's essentially last time coming into SJ as a member of the Mountain West, a lot of emotions are on the line, I think, specifically for him. So I'm excited to see his performance, and maybe he'll even get more minutes than he's accustomed to seeing if, he plays up to par.
He'll be starting this game.
Yeah.
You already know that. I'd be surprised if he didn't start this game.
Yeah, sometimes
especially if Moondy's not back.
Yeah.
Especially if Moondy's ruled out, though.
Man, I hope Moondy's back. That dude's just a complete game changer all around.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that guy's like honestly.
He wasn't warming up at Wyoming, which I think kind of dictated like he's not going to play in this game. But And you never know. I mean, we'll see what there's no preliminary injury report out yet, but
Yeah.
if you could get a Ben Roseborough back this week or a Moondy back this week, I would prefer Moondy back in a game like
Yeah.
this, just because it traditionally has been a good matchup for SJSU like over the years. And quite honestly, when you look at the guard matchup here, like between like Garland and Andrews, like I would give the edge to a guy like Garland, just
Yeah.
given Dylan Andrews' inconsistencies. And Jermaine Washington, he's had himself I'd say like a rough. I mean, I know he just came back, but like this past week wasn't a great shooting percentage week for him, because remember he came out firing to start the year.
Yeah.
So I think one of these next two games, I think you might actually have a good Jermaine Washington shooting game, or just at home in one of these spots against some of the better teams in the league. Because when they were rolling up that lineup combination on Tuesday with Nevada, the Nevada game was horrendous. I mean, lost the game
Man,
by 33.
I know.
The game was over before it started, but you could just see with Garland out there, like how the roles change and how he just kind of gets everybody organized. Because I'm going to be completely honest, I don't like Washington. I really don't like Washington chucking up 15 shots in these games. And especially when he kind of has to like orchestrate the offense, it just looks so much more fluid than when Garland's out there, right? And Washington is like your total typical two guard, where catch and shoot, they'll set him up off the bounce. Like they on the three that he got in the final minute last week, Miles drew it up in the huddle where he's just coming off a screen and catch and shoot turn, and like that's his shot. I don't like him when he's running the offense all too much and he has to kind of create. So roles definitely change with Garland back out there, but you and I are totally in agreement. I think if you want a chance to win this game, you got to have Moondy back, because like we've seen now, like, and it's no knock on those guys like Langford and Overstreet, like they're just too young and raw right now for, I guess, this type of load every night, against like, you're going to see Drew Fielder, who's who's got experience, right? Like, I mean, look, Gavin Gores torched them on Saturday, right? Like that stuff like that can't happen. So you need Moondy back, a guy that's older, that's got tons of starting minutes, for even going back to his Iona days. And even first game back, and if you have it on a minutes restriction, I think it will have impact out there. So very intrigued to see how it's out there. I think usually you already know they drop all the numbers out, all the point spreads for the game 24 hours in advance. I'm seeing a 9.5 home underdog for SJSU. I mean, I would just say that is probably too many points, if you ask me, just given the history of this matchup.
Yeah, I think the home court just kind of sways me more to San Jose State. I admit I still have to see whether or not who's in this game, but just going off history, man, this game's always been close, especially on this court in the 408. It is kind of a high number. I'd expect that to die down whenever the injury reports come up, but I'm shocked by that. But Boise does have ownage over this team, and they've been clicking 3 games in a row. I know they're not against the best teams in Air Force and Wyoming, but the Wyoming game, Nick, that was just 1 point PK, man. That was both ways. They were going to the elevation. No one really had like any type of feeling on Boise yet, coming off of a win, I believe, over Colorado State. I don't know if that was at Colorado State or in Boise, but just the fact that they got that win, and after in Boise, good, yeah. And then after going on the road, going to Wyoming, I think that one was like their breakout game, man. It's kind of one of the reasons why I think they'll win this game coming up to San Jose State. It'll be close, but that Wyoming game kind of showed me what they were all about. I think that was like their make or break point for both of those teams, especially because they've been kind of a little bit mid in the conference, and Boise came out on top. They went out against Air Force, and who knows what they're going to do to San Jose State. But if you're asking me who's got the momentum right now, it's all Boise, man. I think they're in a favorable spot where all these young guys are finally clicking, as opposed to earlier in the season, everybody was kind of hitting the panic button.
Yeah, I would keep an eye for Boise. I know we didn't talk. I know we talked about their three guys, with Fielder, Meadow, and Buchanan. They're three forwards.
They're good all
But
around.
Pearson, yeah, those guys are starting to figure it out for sure. They've gone to Fielder has really kind of taken over, like in Mountain West play, where they're just kind of feeding the post a little bit more inside. Like they're
Yeah.
not in the Wyoming game, which was the game where I think probably a game where they might have turned the corner a little bit. I was surprised. Now I'm looking at the numbers, 26 3-point attempts in that game. Because I would say for them, like if they just imposed their will with their physicality, they could win a
Yes.
lot of games, right? Especially when they're at home, and then kind of open up the 3-point shot from there. But still, that was a game that they made 10 threes in. But Pearson Carmichael and Spencer Aarons, those are the guys I would say to watch off the bench. Similar to what we're talking like with the X factors for San Jose State, those guys could. I mean, Carmichael's kind of similar to Sada and Gonga, where he's like one of these stretch four forwards that could kind of spread out the floor, and was a freshman last year that really sparked for them. And Spencer Aarons is kind of in that same spot where he can shoot the three, but he is the true freshman this year. But just very interested. And I'll tell you what, Jonathan, we're kind of attacking the Mountain West big picture here. We have the Tuesday and Wednesday slate here, right here on the board here. But very interested to see come February timeframe who's really rolling, because I think Boise, obviously the 3-0 stretch is good, right? But if they could take care of business here in San Jose, and then they could go on the road later in the week. It's not up here, but they have Grand Canyon at Phoenix, which no one's won at this year in Mountain West play. This could be your classic Colorado State team from last year, right? Where they're just so scorching hot, it really doesn't matter, and it carries to the tournament. And for a team like Boise State that doesn't have the at-large right now, given how poor their home losses are, and just the non-conference not being great, this could kind of be your team that kind of steals a bid this year. I'm just kind of trying to paint the picture here, where because it's always we've seen it now the last 2 years with Colorado State from last year and New Mexico 2 years ago, where they kind of have the disappointing starts to the season, and they're kind of working their way back and chasing the dragon all the way to March, and then they're so hot that you don't want to play them in the tournament, and they're going to have the crowds at the Vegas tournament behind their back, and next thing you know, they're going dancing. So I'm not saying that could be that for Boise State. I'm just saying, like, hey, this month of February, like, they're starting to figure it out now, and this month of February is pretty critical for them, because then they're going to start hitting the road, and like the game versus like they've had a couple games this year that haven't gone their way, right? 2 overtime road losses in Mountain West play. So I think the team is a little bit, based on what we've seen right now, the team's better than what the record is. I mean, 1-5 start in Mountain West play. I mean, they're better than that. So
yeah, it was a triple overtime game. So yeah,
exactly right. And they were up like 6 points in one of the overtimes with like 40 seconds left. It was some crazy stuff. And the UNLV game, I'm not going to say they probably should have won, but that's a game they traditionally win, right?
Yeah,
so
UNLV's been shocking people. They've been shocking me.
Yeah, they're always shocking people, man. Just kind of attacking the rest of the slate here for Tuesday. I know you and I are going to be on the air, so we won't be able to watch these games live, because we'll have the game right in front of us between the Broncos and the Spartans in San Jose. But GCU and Nevada, both of these games are intriguing on Tuesday. Grand Canyon's at Nevada. I mentioned earlier for Grand Canyon, this is the 4th game in 9 days for them. Kind of a wacky slate. I mean, everybody goes through it, but just given the 4 games in 9 days, just the fact that it was Utah State, San Diego State, Fresno on the road, and now Reno on the road tomorrow, Nevada's coming off the New Mexico loss. And, GCU has been pretty good on the road this year in the Mountain West for that being in their first year. I see Nevada as a 3.5-point favorite right now, 7:30 Pacific time. This game tips off national TV as well. I personally think Nevada bounces back. I think this would be insane to me if Grand Canyon went 4-0 in the most brutal stretch in the league schedule.
Hey man, but they've had the makings to do it. I know they were at home, against Utah State and San Diego State. Controversial call against San Diego State on Miles Byrd in that final possession. But that Fresno State game, I mean, people showed up out there, and they played a good game. And this Nevada team, they're fully some young guys out there. Kind of heard you a little bit earlier. I'm just surprised at the starting lineups they have out there. With Camper all of a sudden averaging is a big presence. He had 20 points his last game. I do actually believe that Grand Canyon will win this game just because of this setup with Boise State, man. I think that Boise State game coming up is going to be pretty huge for both of those teams, especially if Boise can win. And if Grand Canyon wins, I think that sets up a big showdown, this point on in conference play, basically a month left after this week until March. So I think that's going to lead into that. I'm leaning more so GCU for that game against the Wolfpack.
How good has Price been, man? I know you
Dude.
and I have been big. We've been on the Price bandwagon because nobody saw Fresno last year.
I feel like we recruited Price.
Yeah, dude, we've been talking about Price since like Fresno was like last year's non-conference.
He's
and what
such a
he
big
was
part
able
of that
to
team,
do.
man. He can guard anybody.
He can guard anybody, but what's really, because remember last year we saw him in Fresno. We saw him twice in person. Because we went down to the Safeway Center last year. Yeah, he is insane, like wingspan and all. But if you recall last year, he was strictly like just a defensive guy. Like he had really no offensive game. And this year, he's kind of got like an insane like offensive toolbox now, like where to the point where he's not afraid to shoot a three. I mean, he was afraid to shoot a free throw last year in Fresno. So I've been very impressed with this growth. I'm not gonna say he kind of I don't know if I should throw out this comp because it might be a ridiculous comp, but he's kind of, I don't know, but I kind of see just obviously with just the length of his game and just the archetype and build, like a JT Toppin a little bit, just just,
I don't mind it
like physically imposing of like a JT Toppin. I know Toppin can shoot the three at a way more consistent level than Elijah Price. But I'm just saying, I do really see like a high ceiling for this guy because he's only in his second year. I mean, this guy's going to be playing for another 3 years. So
and like not in the Mountain West, I don't think. He's got so much talent.
I would agree. I'm sorry, but this guy's power 4 good.
Yeah,
and you could pencil him in, in a lot of different places. So I'd be floored if he was at Reno next year.
It still gets into foul trouble every now and then, though.
Exactly. Now that's the downside, right? Yeah, because he fouled out in the San Diego State team game when he was banging and bumping with Farrell Compton and Magoon Guath in the game that Guath played, right? So yeah, that's what he's got to clean up. But yeah, okay, we're on different sides of that one. This one I'm torn on. That's the Tuesday night New Mexico UNLV game. UNLV coming off the SDSU loss. New Mexico has gone on the road, and that's been their 2 Mountain West losses thus far. At Boise State, where the game was so ugly and the shooting percentages were so rough for both sides. You kind of take that data point with a grain of salt, I guess. And in the San Diego State game, they were down 4, and they lost the game. They lost the game by 4, right? And I think BJ Davis hit a big shot late in that one. So New Mexico, they're another one of these teams, right? Where this game kind of at UNLV kind of reminds me of their spot and situation at Colorado State on January 6th, and they won the game by 10. I'll lean with New Mexico here, but UNLV, man, they're a wild bunch. and they got a lot of contributors on this team. I have to say, the Rebs got some underrated depth, I would say, like just up and down their roster, where they could kind of throw like their guard depth is pretty good with Dre Gibbs, Lawhorn, Howie Fleming, and then they could kind of throw you Isaac Williams on the bench, who is a little small. He's a true freshman, but he is like the spark plug off the bench, where if you leave him open from three, opens everything up. So I don't. I could see any result here wouldn't shock me, but I'll lean with the Lobos here to take care of business and avoid a resume loss, if you will.
Yeah, that's exactly what it would be. And UNLV, they had their chance to go on the GCU type of run when they beat Utah State. They could have beat San Diego State. They had, I believe they had the lead in the first half at least, and kind of just collapsed in the second.
Oh yeah, the game was close for about 30 minutes at least.
Yeah, it wasn't what the scoreboard indicated. Lawhorn second in the Mountain West, just shooting quietly, man. This guy's kind of just nobody really cares what Pastor's crew's doing, but I lean more so UNLV in this game. I feel like Olin hasn't had his welcome to the Mountain West moment, and Pastor kind of just had it against Dutcher. So I kind of lean more so UNLV in this game. They need it, and New Mexico's kind of in, I don't know, maybe desperation mode, if you will. I kind of feel like them and Utah State just because of, I don't know, resume, especially for Utah State. But UNLV, I kind of lean them a lot more, man. They've impressed me a lot this year. I really liked what they did against San Diego State, and I thought that the game against Utah State was a lot more impressive, I would say, than what GCU was able to do against Utah State and San Diego State.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it all materializes. Obviously, I mean, these games are, man, it's games. It's the slate like tomorrow, especially like the 7:30 and 8 o'clock games. Like they are just dramatic swing games, man.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't be surprised if all these games were close.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't shock me either. Compared to Wednesday, I just traditionally expect both home teams to kind of take care of business, right? It's one of those days on Wednesday, but on Tuesday, you usually get one of these. You usually get a wacky result, or you get a close game or two, right? And you kind of really don't know what to expect and happen. But obviously, you and I will be documenting the progress of the SJSU team out here. It's not looking good right now from a win-loss ratio, but hey, it's a big week. It's a big week. You get Boise for the last time, and then you get New Mexico, which that the Lobos, I mean, they got nobody returning from that team, so it might not really matter.
No.
But that was San Jose State's biggest win of the year last season when they beat the Lobos, because obviously New Mexico went to the second round of the NCAA tournament. So that was a big for SJSU. I do think at some point they're gonna get a game at home that nobody expects. I'm not sure if it happens this week. I don't know. It could happen this week, but there's going to be a game where they shock the world, and they might be blowing up on Twitter, around the sport, like how they did over a year ago versus New Mexico.
Man, I don't know. If this team was fully healthy with all these, four guys that weren't sitting on the bench, I'd probably agree with you. But I think last year's team was a lot more probable. There's just so many factors going on with SJSU this year, sadly.
That last year's team had so much upside.
Yeah, they were criminally underrated, I thought.
They were underrated, man. And then of course, like the league is so good. Like we were convinced, and it kind of stunk last year in the tourney. The fact that it was like a true road game. That's the thing, man.
Yeah.
When you like for SJSU, like for the most part in the first round game, especially when it was last year, the game was insanely dead. It was
first game in the Mountain West tourney.
Yeah. And the game was like what, 11 a.m., 11 a.m.
like
in the morning. Yeah, that was an early day for us. But it was open gym. Let's just be honest. And it was just kind of SJSU kind of flourished in that. And then you come back the next day and it's completely different environment when you're playing New
Yeah.
Mexico.
It totally changed the atmosphere. Those guys didn't really have like just any crowd to go on. I mean, from start to finish, it kind of seemed like the game was over, and that's kind of what I excited for this week. I mean, school's back. Boise State is a potential winning game, and the administration for SJSU is trying to come and pack the house for Saturday night against UNM. They know what's going on against New Mexico, and hopefully this Saturday, SJSU fans actually show up. Commuter school, and some of these fans will be, looking forward to basketball. But until then, we do have Boise State coming up, and maybe some fans will even show up for that game. I'm surprised SJSU was able to play and keep up against Wyoming. I saw the report; there's over 4,000 strong. I don't know if you saw the report, Nick, just against Wyoming. I was just surprised that these guys are able to play against 4,000 people. Over there, in the elevation, Wyoming, 3-point game. Just to kind of go off your fact of what you said about UNM in Vegas, I think these guys are comfortable playing in this year against opposition. Hopefully, this next Tuesday and Saturday, some SJSU fans actually decide to show up, back up their boys, and they're going to need all the help they get, considering they're not even at their strong five right now.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we all agree here. Like, you need Mundi back. Like, let's just, like, if you want any game to, like, let's just put it like this. If you want to, then again, depends on the draw, of course. But, like, if you want to actually, like, win some games here in the Mountain West against, like, some quality opponents, especially at home, I'd say you're gonna need Mundi back, especially against a team like Boise and New Mexico. Right? You're gonna need Mundi back. He's your number 2 scorer. It's encouraging you got Garland back. I was, he missed 4 games. You can argue different ways, right? If, like, he comes back earlier, but if this team wants to maximize what they have with the roster this year, you need to get Yafet Mundi back, because ultimately the ceiling for this team, I believe, is probably day 2 of the tournament, right?
Yeah.
Where you kind of get everybody back. You win one game, and then you run into a team that's going to be probably coming off the bye and pretty well rested. And, it's probably going to be a true road game for you.
And all you can hope for is that you fight in that game. But as long as you win that one game, and it all rests on whether or not these guys are healthy. I think it goes a long way too if eventually Roseboro comes back with Mundi. It just kind of sucks that Spartan Nation hasn't got to see all these guys healthy. Even when Hannah was hurt and when Myers was hurt earlier, we didn't get to see all these guys on the floor, Nick. And I truly believe that if all these guys were on the floor at the same time, we would have had like the best season since the Amari Moore year in 2021, because all these guys are just full of talent. And throughout the whole year, you just had double-digit guys sitting on the bench like Yafet Mundi, the Washington, Jawan Hannah. I mean, Ben Roseboro, something's got to give. So if Mundi comes back, I think that goes a long way as your second scorer, and I think just as important, if not more important, than Garland. And then if Roseboro comes back, then you got a solid piece off the bench to go with Melvin Bell. Those two guys can come off and kind of give Jermaine Washington and Garland some help. And I think if Mundi and Roseboro come back, the Mountain West in the tournament at least, you got to be careful, because SJSU can be a potential dark horse as well. It won't be too much film on those guys since they were injured. And I don't know. I just think a lot of upside if SJSU is healthy, and a lot of credit to Tim Miles for what he's been able to do without his guys. I mean, it was a 3-point game against Wyoming, came down to almost the last shot till Garland stepped out of bounds, and then got a win against Air Force with, all your whole bench. Paja Godarzi was out there leading guys, and, it's a simple matter of the fact, like, that's what it is. And I'm just so glad they were able to get that win over Air Force, because that would have broke my heart a little bit if they didn't. It was only an 8-point game. They separated themselves from the pack, in that game. I needed to know that they were still, competitors, and they were. And that kind of showed you the fighting spirit going into Wyoming. And they can catch anybody on any given day. And if Mundi is healthy, even if not, you got Garland can go off for like 30 any given day as well. This guy's still top 50 in the nation, or top 60 now. He's 56th in the nation in points per game. And hopefully it's going to be a heck of a ride in that Boise game. I'm excited to see what Boise is able to do too, because like we've been talking about, they're on a heater themselves. Everybody everybody's touching the ball is finding the net right now for those guys.
Well, a game that's traditionally closed out here in San Jose, going back to a 3-year sample size now, minus the year one of the Tim Miles era. This very matchup in San Jose has been very close. So I would not be shocked if we get a close game. You and I will be in the air tomorrow on KSJS 90.5 FM for anyone out here in the Bay, ksjs.org for anybody else, outside that region that wants to hear our broadcast commentary analysis. We'll probably do an extended pregame tomorrow, I would imagine, just given the fact that tomorrow's game is last time we'll probably get this matchup, out in our neck of the woods. So we'll be posting all of that good stuff on Twitter. But yeah, 7 p.m. tip. Looking forward to the game tomorrow, man. Appreciate you for coming on, and we'll be catching up tomorrow.
Can't wait, man. Yeah, it's gonna be a great night. Let's do it.
All right, that will do it for this episode of the Sports Sentiment. Once again, I am your host, Nick Urias, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.